Welcome back, my friends, to my channel and to another creative video. In this video, I'm going to be sharing a peek into my process of a very layered surface while making use of the masking process. Now, I just recently released a brand new little instant access class called Graffiti Love, where we are layering all kinds of different messy techniques along with the theme of Valentine's Day to create some really interesting surfaces. And in this class, I actually make use of stencils and masks a lot. And actually wanted to share in this video how you can take that concept of using a mask and go really big, go unique and interesting with that surface. Now, a mask is basically some kind of way to block off or mask off your surface. For my own process, I'm actually working on heavier duty watercolor paper. This works really well with acrylic paint. I can add lots of layers of that paint without things buckling or tearing. And I'm also creating my own mask, which is just a heart cut out of scrap watercolor paper. It has a little bit of stability to it, so it's a little bit heavy duty. And I'm just using some masking tape here and there to adhere it to my surface. I don't want to permanently glue it down or tape it down. I just want it stuck on there while I work on my surface. Now, you can create masks in a variety of different ways. You can cut them yourself, you can use punches in interesting ways. I like to keep my shapes pretty simple, and since Valentine's Day is coming up, I thought it would be fun to use the shape of a heart and go pretty large on this surface. And a mask is pretty much the opposite of a stencil. You are using either a shape or something to block or mask off that surface so that if you are working over the top of it, once that surface dries, once you are ready to pull that mask away, you will be left with the empty blank surface below or whatever type of surface that you have masked off. It's a really fun way to work with space, to work with adding shapes to a surface. I love using a mask if I am working with really messy layers because I'm able to create this really interesting shape that I can hang on to and then work over the top of things, around things, without worrying about what is happening to that shape. Again, I wanted to go really large with that heart, working off of more of a Valentine theme. I'm actually using loose paper, but I love the idea of doing this if you're creating Valentine cards or working your art journal around the holiday theme of Valentine's Day, or even just working with the motif of love or hearts. And what I really enjoy doing within this process is getting really, really messy. Obviously, my big heart shape is masking or blocking off that surface below. So that means I can get really messy over the top of it, in and around it. What's fun is once I pull this mask off, I also have that heart shape that's been painted in an interesting way. I like doing this because you can let some of those shapes, those brush strokes, anything you add to that surface can be done without worrying too much about where things go. You can just work right over the top of that mask. And once you remove it, you will have the edge of that shape. Now for this surface, I am working with messy brush strokes. I've got a few stencils that I've used in here, some handwriting, some messy handwriting here and there. My goal is to create a really, really messy surface. Once again, a little bit inspired by graffiti. That is kind of a little nod to this class that I just finished creating. It's been really fun over here to continue working with some of these designs and concepts. This is something I actually do all the time in my art journal, no matter what I'm working on. I love starting with a really messy, expressive surface and often working over the top of it with layers and pulling inspiration from graffiti, from the layered, weathered look and feel that you find in graffiti is a fun way to do this. And then once that surface is dry, you can pull that mask away. So I'm obviously not a perfectionist, especially when I'm playing around on a surface like this. So you want to be careful not to let things rip or to ruin that surface if possible when it comes to peeling that tape away. Often if I am working on a surface that requires a little bit more attention, I will be a little bit more careful. But what you will see is that I've peeled away my heart and I've got that blank space that I can now work inside of. You'll notice some of my messy paint kind of bled under the edges of my mask, which I'm not too concerned about at this point. Again, I wasn't taking too much care and attention to get things perfect because as you see this develop, you will realize I just don't even care too much if I'm adding this many layers and drawing over the top of things. But if you want that mask really having a nice tight seal on that surface and keeping those edges fairly clean, you're probably just going to want to be mindful about how much paint you have on your brush and the certain types of techniques you use for that surface when you're working over the top of that mask. I went really sloppy with my paint, which is something I do all the time, and that is why you can see some of that paint that kind of got inside of that heart shape, which at this point is not too concerning because I'm going to be drawing over the top of a lot of this space with some mandala designs. And for the process, I am using a circle helix. You could use a compass or trace around something circular. I am just needing to create these layered circles that will enable me to draw inside of them to create all those decorative mandalas within this heart surface. So I've got my favorite drawing pen, a little Micron, and I'm just going to work my way through all my circles to draw some mandalas. What I really enjoy when I work in lots and lots of layers is finding unique ways to get the layers to kind of stand alone or work together in very interesting ways. So I've got my really messy background. I've got a lot of those pinks and purples happening in that background, but now I actually want to go finer with my details and within this surface. What I love about masking off some space is that you can hang on to whatever is below that mask. In this case, I hung on to just that blank white paper. And when I have blank white paper showing through in some of my surfaces, I love grabbing my drawing tools and using some sort of pattern or drawing within that shape or on that surface. And so I thought it would be fun to create this really interesting push and pull between my really messy, busy background and then adding some decorative mandalas, almost transforming it into a little bit of a pattern or surface design within that heart. I wanted to have this very interesting contrast of that mess and then some refined little drawings inside of that heart design to really play off of all of those different layers. Now, at this point, I already know that things are going to be quite busy, which means at the end of this process, I'm probably going to have to go in and pick some sort of color that's really going to get this heart to pop. But right now, I'm going to let you all watch me fill my heart with all of these mandala designs. Then I'll meet you back here for my last step in creating this surface. So you can see that I have filled a good portion of that heart with those decorative mandalas. And now what I want to do is really get that heart to pop. Whenever I am working on a really busy surface with lots of layers, contrast is incredibly important. And so I knew, because some of that paint kind of bled into my blank surface, eventually I would want to brighten things up and correct a few mistakes here and there. And I'm just using my Posca pen to outline the outside of my heart. What's fun about a Posca is while that ink is wet, you can use a brush to kind of scruff up that surface and distribute that pigment from your paint pen. I love doing this to correct little mistakes or to pull out edges, but then I can soften up those edges here and there while that pigment is wet. And because I added a little bit more of that color white around that heart, I actually want it to kind of seamlessly meld into the rest of my busy surface. And I will often use mark making or messy handwriting if I am wanting to kind of pull a couple of different elements together on a surface like this with lots of layers. For me, that means just adding some little dots and marks here and there. Now, I was not sure if I was going to stop at this layer. I actually really liked it with just that white heart. I felt like there was a lot of contrast and I was able to get it to pop. But I thought, you know what, let's go in with another color. I really want to brighten this up. I really want to pull some contrast even further into this surface. And so I picked a color that I had not used at all in my messy surface, and that was the color yellow. And I used some paint pens and markers just to add some additional color to the inside of this heart to get a little bit more color happening and a little bit more contrast and pop. Often a surface like this is really just me playing and experimenting. I go into it thinking I'm going to work with a mask and see how far I can take that messy surface, and I usually learn a lot of things along the way that I will apply to other surfaces. For me, this is all about playing with color and contrast, and often I like to challenge myself to see how many layers, how many different elements I can pull into a surface and try my best to get it to work. Sometimes it doesn't work. Other times I really enjoy the end result and it's a fun process to work through. This one was fun because at the end I thought I want more color in this surface and I want to challenge myself to see how I can incorporate that color into some of my little decorative mandalas inside of that heart through the use of just some markers and that paint pen and just adding these little pops of color here and there. I was able to really pull that heart to the forefront, the foreground of my surface, and have that messy background be what it was meant to be, which is a background. Now, while you could go about creating a surface like this without a mask, it's always fun to play around with different concepts and techniques. And I'm hoping this little process and this little example inspires you all start playing around with masks and ways that you can work with layers in your own creative surfaces. Masking off your space or blocking off some part of your surface with some sort of a shape or design is a really fun way to play around with all of those mixed media layers. I'm going to let you all watch me finish up this surface and once again, hopefully inspire you to get playing with layers and maybe start experimenting with those masks.